Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. So hello and welcome to Lightroom Basics. My name is Nikki and I am an instructor with the Plano Public Library. Today I will be assisted by my chat facilitator and tech support, Megan. Would you mind saying hi, Megan?
Hello, I'm Megan.
Awesome, thank you. So before we get started, just a couple of ground rules. You will be muted today during class and we do have your video blocked, so you will only be seeing my screen today. At the top of your Zoom screen, you should find an exit full screen option if you need to get to other things on your computer, which might include Lightroom if you plan on following along with us in the program today. You are also welcome to ask questions or request that I repeat any information at any time during today's program. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see an icon that says chat. You can click on that to open the chat window, and this is going to be seen by library staff only, but please do note that any inappropriate comments will cause your immediate removal from the class. If you prefer, you can also use the Q&A feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. Additionally, a recording of today's class will be available in a few days on the Plano Public Library YouTube page, which we will share a link for at the end of class. So if you want to watch today's class again and practice with the recording later, that is also an option. If you would like to follow along on your own computer, you may, but do keep in mind that it is going to be difficult to give one-on-one assistance during the program today or troubleshoot for you, but we will try to take it slow in case you are practicing along with us. So today we are going to be covering the basics of photo organization and some of the editing tools that are available to help digitally enhance your photos in the program Adobe Lightroom. This class is designed to be at a beginner level, so there is no experience required, and we will be keeping our topic coverage at an introductory level. With practice, Lightroom can become a very powerful photo editing tool to add into your digital workflow. If you want to follow along with today's class or when the recording is posted, you can get a free 7-day trial of Lightroom through the Adobe website, or currently all 5 of the Plano Public Library locations are offering access to the Adobe Creative Cloud. So you can access Lightroom for free anytime at the library with your library card on our Adobe stations. In addition to those Adobe stations at every building, Parr, Haggard, and Harrington libraries have a digital creation space that you can book, where you can also get access to the full Adobe Creative Cloud suite along with some other really cool software and equipment. Now, I do have some exercise files to share with you guys today. Megan, would you mind dropping the link to the Google Drive into the chat for them? So if you guys are planning on following along today, or if you want to follow along later while watching the recording, you can follow that Google Drive link and download the exercise files for today. So before we hop into the software Lightroom, what is Adobe Lightroom? So Lightroom is a cloud-based service that provides users with the ability to organize, store, edit, and share their photos across any device. So this includes desktop, mobile devices, and web. It is an industry standard when it comes to digital photography software. And like most of the Adobe Creative Cloud applications, it is a powerhouse when it comes to the wide range of features that users have access to for their photography project needs. Today, we do only have an hour, and we will be covering the very basics of what you need to know to start familiarizing yourself with Lightroom and how it can help streamline the processing workflow for photography. I would like to take this time to mention that you do also have access to some really wonderful courses with your library card, both on LinkedIn Learning and Udemy, that are several hours long and delve a lot further into some of the tools and topics that we will cover just the basics of today. And links for those will be shared at the end of class as well. So, a quick note, Adobe does also offer Lightroom Classic, which is a desktop-based application that will store your work locally on a single device, but it does not offer access to your photos through the cloud on multiple devices. Either device or either application is perfectly capable of providing you with all that you need to edit and organize photos, but today we are going to be focusing on Lightroom, which gives you that option to save to the cloud and work across multiple different devices. Okay, so now that we've covered what Lightroom is, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the PowerPoint and actually go ahead and open up Lightroom. So I'm just going to search for the program and open up Adobe Lightroom here. It's going to take just a moment to load. Okay, And so this is the Lightroom workspace. If you're familiar with any of the other Adobe applications, the workspace looks pretty similar. So at the top, we're going to have our menu bar, and then we have some panels. We have a panel over here on the left, and then another panel over here on the right where all of our editing tools are going to be. If you are following along, you might have to toggle this button up here at the top, this photos button, because it might not be automatically opened at first. So you might not be able to see all of your photos. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle that back open. And we are going to start by talking about some photo organization. So you can import photos into Lightroom directly from your camera, a memory card, or from files that are already on your computer. Lightroom does provide tools to organize and categorize images using keywords, tags, flags, and ratings, which make it easier to locate and manage large photo collections. And we're going to talk about all of that today. So, how you do choose to utilize these tools is very personal to you. And as you use Lightroom more, you will definitely develop your own system for organization and file management. But we're going to talk about the basics. So we're going to start with importing some photos, and today we're going to import photos that are already on our computer. So those are going to be those exercise files that I talked about. So to import photos that are already on your computer, we're going to navigate to this left panel over here, and up at the very top, we can see there is this Add Photos button. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and that is going to pop up a little navigator window here. And this is where if you just download the files and are following along, it's probably going to be in like your downloads, but I actually have it on my desktop today in my class folder. So you're just going to go ahead and navigate to wherever your exercise files are located. And you've got two options for uploading. So you can either click on a folder, and if you know that folder contains all of the photos that you want to import, you can just click on the folder and select Choose Folder, and that's going to import all of those photos. However, if you have a folder that has other files in there and you don't necessarily want to import everything, you can just double click on that folder. It's going to open it up and show you all of your files that are within there. And then you can either click on an image and then hold Control if you need to click images that are maybe not subsequent. And then you can choose whatever images you want to import. Or you can click on the last image, click and hold Shift, and then click the first image, and it's going to select everything in that folder. So just a couple different ways to get your files into Adobe. I'm going to go ahead and click down here, Review for Import. And now on our review for import page, you will want to make sure that the little check mark that is at the top of the top left of each photo is selected. If you happen to accidentally choose files that you did not want to import currently, you can unselect those files, and then those will not be included when we actually import into Lightroom. Now, I did want to bring your attention real quickly up at the middle of this menu bar. There is this option, and it might be a little hard to see on Zoom, so I'm sorry if y'all can't see it, but it does say Add to Album. Currently, it is set to none. And if you're following along, I want you to go ahead and keep it on none. But I did want to show you that if you already have albums that exist within Lightroom, so if you've already started using Lightroom, you have the option to add it directly to an album. And we're going to talk about albums a little bit more after we get these all imported so you guys will know what I'm talking about. But for today's class, we're going to go ahead and say we're not going to add it to an album. We just want to import it. So once we have all of our photos selected, we are going to come up here to the right-hand side of the window and click Add 13 Photos. Okay, and so now those have been uploaded, and over here on the left-hand side panel, we can see that we can see the photos that we just imported underneath Recently Added, and it has a Just Now option. So that is showing us just the photos that we just uploaded. So now near the bottom of this left-hand panel, you can probably see down here, it has this albums option. And so albums can be utilized to group similar photos together. And that might be by session or by topic, by date, whatever works for you in your workflow. So let's look at creating an album for our class. So to create an album, you would click right here on this little plus sign and then select Create Album. but I want to make it a little easier for us. So we're actually going to select all of the photos that we want to be in this new album before we do that. And I'm actually going to try to increase this a little bit, so hopefully you guys can see this a little better. Okay, so I'm going to click on the first image here and then hold Shift and click on the last image so that I'm selecting all of our photos. And you can see they've all been selected because there is this little white box that appears around each image. And now I'm going to come down here to where we have our albums and click Create Album. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and name this album. I'm just going to go ahead and name it Class. And you will want to make sure that you have this checkbox next to include the 13 selected photos selected. If you don't have that selected, then it's just going to create an empty album and we'll have to drag and drop the photos over, which of course you can do. But for the ease of today's class, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that is selected and then press create. Okay, and then now down here, we can see that that has created an album. So if I click in it, we can see all of those photos here in our album and ready for class. So again, albums are created to group images together, but an additional option for organization of your photo library are folders. And folders can be created to help you organize your albums. So they can be used to group together related albums or even other folders. So you can have a folder and a subfolder. A super useful tip that can be applied to your workflow in pretty much any Adobe application is going to be to create consistent folder structure. So you'll want to create a hierarchy of folders and subfolders that's going to make sense to you and your workflow, and then you'll want to stick to it. So you might sort by date, by subject, by project, by topic. This is going to look different for everyone. And you will learn what works best for you. And once you do, you'll have a very easy way to navigate what might be a very large catalog of images. So let's go ahead and practice making a folder structure together to help further organize our class files. So to create a folder, we're going to click again on that little plus symbol that is in our left-hand panel here. And instead of selecting that first option of create album, we're going to select create folder. Now I'm going to go ahead and name this folder class and select create. And then we can see it has generated a folder here titled class. Now, I do want to show you real quickly, if I drop down this archive, you can see a past class that I have done, and I'm going to show you how to delete in just a moment. So that's a folder with a subfolder within it, or my testing folder. If I drop that down, you can see I have two subfolders within there that are organized by year. So I'm going to go ahead and now click on this class album and drag it into the class folder. And if you had multiple albums that you wanted to drag into a single folder, you could definitely do that. Again, you would just click on an album and then either Shift or Control click to select the albums that you were wanting to drag at once, and then you could drag that all into the folder. But now let's say that we wanted to create a subfolder within our class folder to maybe indicate the year of the class. We can do that. And if you ensure that you're already selected or have clicked on the folder, then click the plus button again. I'm going to click create folder, and I'm going to go ahead and type in the year, so 2025. And it's smart enough to know that I was already in the class folder and is asking if I want to create this folder 2025 inside of that class folder, which I do. So I'm going to go ahead and press create. And then we can see it has created a folder titled 2025 as a subfolder of our class folder. So now I'm going to go ahead and click and drag our class album into 2025. And now we can see that class is within our 2025 folder. Now, if you wanted to delete a folder, you can absolutely do that. So I'm going to go here to our archive folder, and we are going to go ahead and delete my last class folder. And how you would do that is just by right-clicking on the folder and then deleting the folder. And I wanted to read this out. So the folder delete class 2023 will be deleted along with any folders or albums it contains, but any shared albums will be unshared. However, photos will remain in your library. So any photos that are currently in my delete class 2023 folder are not going to be deleted from my library, but that folder will be deleted. So I'm going to go ahead and press delete. But if you needed to still access those folders, it would be here underneath this all photos option, which is about midway up this left-hand side panel. So that is just deleting like your organization structure basically, and you would still be able to find photos that were within that album here underneath all photos. A quick note, so you cannot create an album within an album, and you also cannot add photos to a folder unless they are in an album. So if I try to drag, let's say, this image here into just a folder over here, it's going to tell me I cannot do that because folders cannot contain images that are not within an album. So in our organization structure, we're always going to want to make sure that we have an album for our photos, and then we can utilize folders to further create organization. Okay, so that's folders and albums. We're going to talk about keywords and flags next, but before we do so, are there any questions? Okay, just a reminder, you can drop questions at any time into the chat. So if I need to repeat anything or if something's not making sense, just make sure to utilize that chat. But we'll go ahead and move on to talk about keywords and ratings. And after we do that, then we'll move into some of the basic editing tools that are available in Lightroom. So utilizing keywords can help you quickly locate certain photos. So for example, you can add the keyword beach to all of your vacation photos that specifically feature a beach. So if you're following along, make sure you are in our album class here. And we're going to go ahead and select 3 different photos. And for this, I think I'm going to select our photos that kind of prominently feature a sky, whether that's a sunset or a bunch of clouds. And I guess I'll select this one actually. So 4 different photos that I have selected here. And again, I was just holding down Control as I selected these photos, and we can see those 4 photos have a white box around them. And now I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to pull up our keyword option, and that is going to be Control K. And once I do that, we can see over here on the right-hand side that a panel has opened up called Keywords. And this is where we are going to be able to actually add keywords to each of these folders. So you can add multiple keywords at a time, and how you would do that is actually just by putting a comma between each keyword. So I'm going to make the keywords for these 4 photos. We'll just do sky. I will do class, and then I'm going to go ahead and put 2025 as well, and then press enter. And then we can see here that applied to all of my selected photos are these keywords 2025, class, and sky. Now, if you add a keyword and you decide you want to remove it, you can actually click on the keyword. You'll see a little red line will appear through the keyword. If you click on it, it's going to go ahead and remove that keyword. So now we're left with just the 2 keywords of 2025 and sky. Now, if you wanted to search your catalog in Lightroom, and that can either be searching in a specific album, or you can hop back and select all photos and search in your entire library. You can come to the top middle of the screen here, and there's this search all photos option. And this is where you would be able to put in that keyword. So I'm going to go ahead and type sky and press enter. And it should bring up the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 options. I will mention this is a bit of a newer update to Lightroom, but it is using AI to kind of tag this itself because it does feature a pretty prominent sky in it. If you notice when I clicked on it, it doesn't actually have a keyword added to it. But if I click on this, you can see the keywords that are associated with each image. So that's actually something that I noticed when I was preparing for class today, is that it seems to be using some kind of AI feature to actually locate images that it deems has a sky in it, which is pretty cool, actually. And then if we wanted to search for a different term, up here in the search bar, we could click the little X and it would remove that keyword, and then we could move on to a different one, which I believe The other one I kept was 2025. So let's see. Okay, so that's actually it's choosing ones that I had tagged with 2025, but also photos that I have uploaded here in 2025 as well. So that's interesting. So that's a little bit about searching with keywords. I'm going to hop back to the class album down here so we can see just our exercise files for today. And we're going to talk about ratings and flags. So ratings and flags can help if you have multiple images that are similar and you want to narrow it down to your best option. So for example, if you're shooting like a portrait session or a wedding or something like that, you might end up with a bunch of photos from the same couple seconds that are very similar, but you only want to utilize one for your editing. Ratings and flags can kind of help you with this. So first we'll talk about ratings, and this can be done from this window here. You will click on the photo that you want to rate. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this kind of sunset one down here. And down at the bottom of our screen, you'll see in the middle, there are these stars. These are going to be our ratings. So we have an option of anywhere from 1 to 5 stars. And right next to that are our flags, but we're going to talk about the ratings first. So I'm going to go ahead and rate this a 5 star. I think it's quite a pretty sunset. And then I'm going to click on another one. Let's do this one of pomegranates. And I'm going to go ahead and rate it 1 star. And before I show you guys how to filter through your either album or your entire photo library, I am going to talk about flags, and then I'll show you how you can filter through your photos utilizing those ratings or those flags. So the flags are pretty cool. You can actually assign flags to each image while you're here in this view. So for example, if I wanted to click on this image here and flag it as a discard or rejected, that's going to be this flag that has a little X on it. I can do that. However, if you have two photos that are very similar, so for example, I'm going to go ahead and choose, let's say, this photo down here of kind of this sunset. And I'm also going to choose this photo up here, which is just another kind of sky one. I can then go down here in the bottom left of this middle workspace and select this view, which is called compare. So it has these two little rectangles next to each other. And that is now going to pull up our images side by side. So this would come in really handy if you're trying to decide which of these images you want to keep and you want to get a little bit of a bigger view of both of them side by side. And so I'm going to go ahead and let's flag this as the reject, and I'm going to flag this as the keep. Okay, so now that I have done that, let's go ahead and we're going to filter our catalog utilizing those ratings and flags. So once you've rated everything and flagged everything or not, you definitely don't have to do this. It's just something that could be helpful. You can come up to right next to the search bar. There is this little filter option. It's like a little funnel. You can click on that, and then that's going to pop down a little bar right here where we have some options that we can utilize to filter. So real quickly before we start filtering, I'm going to change my view again. Down here at the bottom left of the screen is the option to go back to the photo grid. So I'm going to choose that just because I like this view better when I'm filtering instead of just pulling up two images at once. And up here, if we want to filter by our ratings, we have some options. So we can select anywhere from 1 to 5 stars. But right to the left of that, there is this option that we can change to be equal to, uh, less than or equal to, or greater than and equal to. When I'm filtering, I tend to just do equal to. So if I did equal to and then selected 5 stars, that should pull up the image that I rated as 5 stars. And then if I select 1 star, it should pull up the image that I rated as 1 star. So this would be helpful if you have gone in and rated a bunch of photos and you're now wanting to find what photos you have rated as 5 stars versus 1, 2, 3, or 4 stars. Now you can also filter for the flags. So I'm going to go ahead and select the picked photos. And right now it's going to say, oh no, a black hole, no photos matching these filters are found. And that's because it still has that rating, the star rating on there. So up here in the search bar, I'm going to click X next to that. And then it's going to show me my picked photos, which I had already had a couple other picked photos as well. And so it's showing all three of the photos that I have selected as being picked or accepted. Now, if I wanted to see the ones I've rejected, I'm going to just click the little X next to that picked in the search bar. And then I can go ahead and click the rejected photos. And it's going to show the photos that I have selected to be rejected. In between those two options is the option to see anything that you have not yet flagged. So from here, I could decide if I'm wanting to flag things as rejected or keeping it, so on and so forth. So a couple of tips. You can also filter for both ratings and flags at the same time. So I'm going to do, I think what I just did was I'm going to do equals to 1, which I know was my pomegranate, and I think I actually clicked accepted for that one. Yes, and so it's going to show this here because I had rated it as 1 star and I had also rated it as picked. I probably should have chose rejected. That would have made more sense for a 1 star, but you can filter using both your ratings and your flags at the same time. Okay, so now that we have covered some basics of photo organization in Lightroom, we are going to jump into some editing basics. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of our filters up here. And before we talk about some of the photo editing basics, were there any questions that have popped up? Okay, so we are going to talk about a couple different basic editing tools. We're going to start with some presets. So I'm going to go ahead and select, let's say, this photo right up here, which if you double click on it, it's going to change your view to the detail view so you can see a much larger view of that photo. I'll bring your attention down here to the bottom right of the panel. You can see that we can change our zoom options. Right now it's on fit so that we can see the entire image in frame. But if you wanted to zoom in and get like a detailed view, you can absolutely do that. So I just selected 100%. It's going to zoom it in. And if I need to move around, you would just need to, oops, click and drag on the photo, and then you would be able to navigate through the photo to whatever portion it is that you're needing to see. I'm going to go ahead and go back to fit though. And we are going to open up our presets panel. So over here on the right-hand side of the screen, we have a small menu bar, and the very top option is the option for our presets panel. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and that's going to pop out our presets panel here. So a general rule of thumb and a good workflow is to determine if you're going to be using any presets before you begin editing for light and color. And that's because preset filters are going to have their own ranges for light and color set. And so if you select a preset after you've already done your own edits to light and color, you're actually going to be changing all of those edits that you have already made, which could be really frustrating. So that's why I'm showing you guys the presets first. Here in the presets panel, there's a couple different options. So there's recommended, premium, and yours. And so yours is actually where you can save your own presets. And that will typically be done after you've made your own edits to lighting and color. So I will show you guys, we'll hop back into this presets panel after we do light and color edits so I can show you how to save your own edits to a preset if you're wanting to use like a specific style or you just really like the edits you've made for an image and think it's going to work for another image. But right now we're going to look at the recommended, and the recommended is actually just kind of another AI feature. It analyzes your photo and gives you some recommended filters that you can look through and decide if you want to use or not. So I'm going to click on, let's just do this one. And real quickly, because I want to show you guys what I mean by the presets have their own kind of ranges set, I'm also going to open up our edit panel. So that's down here, or I'm sorry, up here on the right-hand side. I'm going to click that edit. And you can see here when I click between this preset and this preset, all of these values over here are changing. So for each preset that I sit on, or click on, I'm sorry, they each have a different value over here. So again, that's why it's important to choose a preset first, and then you can go in and make further adjustments if needed.
I have a
There's
quick
also
logistical question in the
yes,
chat. Is the keyword bar collapsible?
the key, like up here where we're the search bar, is that what we're
I believe so, yes.
talking about? That's a great question. I've never tried to collapse it, honestly. It might be if we do view. Let's see. Uh, hmm. That's a great question. I just from if it was, I believe we'd be able to find it here. Maybe if we move to full screen window. Nope, it's still there underneath full screen window. So I don't think so. That's a great question.
Oh, they said, apologies, there was a column on the right-hand side, but when you clicked edit, it went away.
Oh, like the keywords panel that pops up over here. Yes, I think if I'm going to control K real quick, it's going to pop the keywords up again. And for the most part, once we open another panel, that should close that keyword panel. Um, so yeah, if you need it to go away, you can just select another panel, and then once you minimize that panel, it will go away pretty easily. Okay. So back to, I just want to show you real quick the premium presets. So this is like all of the presets you have access to, and there's quite a few, which is why I actually do, if I'm going to be using a preset, like to use this recommended one, because it kind of gives you just a taste of, I think it's anywhere from like 15 to 20 presets that they recommend for your image. But you can definitely go through this premium and sort through all of the different presets. There's just a lot to sort through. Okay. And then one more thing, if you did want to go ahead and reset a preset, so I selected this one, I decide I don't like it. Up at the top of the preset panel, there is this little arrow that's pointing backwards. If you click on that, it's going to take you back to just your original image. So I'm actually, I think for the next part, we will start with a preset. So if you're following along, feel free to just choose whichever preset speaks to you. So I'm going to start with this, and I'm actually going to go ahead and close my presets panel now. So I'm just going to click on that presets panel button over here. That's going to close that panel. And we're going to talk about some of the different light editing tools that are available to you. So we can see there is exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. And actually, I'm changing my mind. We're actually going to go ahead and reset the light because I'd like to show you guys from the very beginning how all of these kind of affect when you move the sliders. So exposure is going to be a really common photography term. It's basically the amount of light that's being let into your frame. And in film photography, exposure is super important while you're capturing images. But luckily, with the more digital format of photography that's common today, exposure can be adjusted for if the original image ends up either over or underexposed. So underneath each of these options, you'll see there is a little slider bar with a circle in the middle. So you can click and hold on that circle. And for exposure, if we move it to the right, that is going to expose it more. And if we move it to the left, that's going to give it more of an underexposed feel. It gets very dark there. You can also click up here to the right-hand side of the term that we're looking at. If you click on the number value, you can use your up or down arrows to kind of move your way through instead of sliding if that's what you prefer. And you can also just type in a value, which that's the maximum, and that looks a little crazy. So if you want to reset just one of these options, you can actually hover over the title and you're going to be able to click reset and it will take you back to that 0 option. Another really cool thing about most Adobe applications is when you hover over things, it will give you a little breakdown of what it means and how it might affect your edits. So it's going to do that for all of these. If you hover over it, it's going to give you a quick preview of what's going to happen to your image if you mess with that slider. So moving down, we see contrast is next. And contrast is going to describe tones and specifically the relationship between the darkest and the brightest parts of an image. So if the difference between the darkest and lightest portions of an image is vast, for example, the shadows are very dark and the highlights are very bright, an image is said to have high contrast. So when an image is kind of more gray and there's less difference between light and dark, it's considered less contrast. So if I move this slider up, it's going to increase the contrast. And I do know sometimes on Zoom it's a little hard to see this difference. So I'm going to try to do that again for you guys. But you'll see if you'll focus here, like on the skulls, they're going to get a little whiter. And then over here where the peppers are, it'll get really dark. And so that's increasing our contrast. So really white over here and then really dark over here. If we move it to the left, that's going to decrease the contrast and it's going to bring those colors to where there's not so much of a difference between the two. I'm going to go ahead and click on reset and we're going to move to highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. So these all are going to work on very similar parts of your image, but a good rule of thumb is to work with the white and black values before you start to focus on the highlight and shadows. And that's because the white and black values are going to be bringing up the values in the entire image. So it's going to bring up the black values in the entire image, regardless of if it's in the shadows or in the highlights, or it's going to bring up the white value of your entire image. So let's go ahead and see if we move our slider underneath the whites and we move it to the right. Again, if you'll focus kind of on the skulls here, you'll see that those get much wider. But also over here, you can see the peppers are getting brighter as well. So now this time, if you'll look over here at the peppers, you can see that as I move that up, those are going to get a little brighter as well. Now with the blacks, if I move it to the left, that is when we're going to be adding in more black tones. And so as I add it to or drag it to the left, we can see these skulls kind of get less bright white and that this shadow over here gets really shadowy. But if I move it to the right, we're going to be removing black values. And so that's going to brighten up the entire image. Now, if we move on to highlights and shadows, this is only going to focus on, for the highlights, the brightest parts of your image, and for the shadows, it's going to be the darkest parts of your image. So for the highlights, when we move it up to the right, we're going to be adding highlights in, and we should see for the most part that our skulls here are increasing in brightness a little bit over here on our peppers because there are some highlights on the peppers where maybe the light is shining on it. But real quickly, let me show you how that looks different from if I did the whites here. So this is with the highlights bumped up, and then this is with the whites bumped up. So you can see that really brings out the vibrancy over here for the whites because again, we're bringing up all of the tonal ranges in the image versus highlights is really going to focus on the highlights. So those peppers don't become quite as red, but we can kind of see the highlights where the light is shining on it is a little brighter than before. So same is going to go with shadows. If I move it down here to the left, we are going to kind of increase those shadows. So we can see here next to the peppers or maybe behind the skulls here, that gets really dark. While for the most part, our skulls here don't change too much. So we'll do that one more time. Focus here. We'll see that we're not getting change in this really bright area because it's just focusing on those shadows. Now, if we were to drag it to the right, that's going to decrease the amount of shadows. And so it's going to really bring out the colors in our image here. Okay, so that is the light panel here. Real quickly, I'm going to reset this. So again, you can right click here and choose reset light. I'm going to show you what's here underneath the color. So underneath color, we have options for temperature, tint, vibrance, and saturation. So temperature is going to adjust the white balance of a photo, and it's going to control the amount of blues and yellows that are in a photo. So you can definitely use this if you want to kind of introduce what is called a color cast to your photo. So if you want your photo to have a really cool tone to it, we could drag the temperature bar down. We'll see this is to the blue side, and we can see that really brings out some blues. It adds blues to our brightness here. But if we drag it to the right, we're going to be adding in more yellows. So that kind of gives it more of a faded, almost vintagey vibe. Now, tint is going to focus on greens and pinks. So again, I'm going to go ahead and drag the tint to the left, and we'll see it kind of gives it that green overcast. Versus if we pull it to the right, it's going to pull in more of a magenta, purpley pink tone. And again, if you just click on the name of the slider that you're on, you can reset that value. And then vibrance is going to focus on blues and greens, but normally you can adjust vibrance without affecting skin tone too much. So this is maybe not the best image for us to be looking at for that. But if we go all the way to the left, it's really going to take out a lot of color. You can see we definitely still have some red in our peppers here, but if we move to the right, it's going to really bump up the colors. Kind of does some crazy looking things to our skulls there. And then saturation is going to be intensity of color overall. A pretty general rule is you don't want to go over 15 here. So I've already pulled it up to about 25, and that's just because it can kind of begin to affect the way your image looks. It might not look very realistic. So if you're not going for a super realistic vibe, then that's totally okay. But in general, especially if you're like adjusting saturation for portraits or anything like that, it's a pretty good rule to not go over 15 when you're moving the slider to the right. Now, if we were move it all the way to the left, that's when we would get a black and white image. So that's also an option if you're wanting to do a black and white image. Okay, now that we have talked about light and color, I forgot I wanted to leave some of these. I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments here, and I'm not focusing too much on what it really looks like. So I just want to show you guys how you would be able to save um, your edits as a preset. So let's say, okay, so let's say that I really like how this looks. I really like these presets that I have, and I have other images that were maybe taken around the same time that I want to end up looking just like this. We can save all of these changes that we have made as a preset so that we can easily apply all of these changes to other photos that we have. So to do that, I'm going to open up this preset panel again. And then when we do that, I'm going to go ahead and click to the right-hand side of presets. There's this little plus button. I'm going to click on Create Preset, and then I can title the preset. So for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and name it Class 2025. Down here, you have the options of, there are other things in Lightroom that you can edit. Today, we were just focusing on light and color. So I'm actually going to go ahead and deselect all of these other options since we have not gone over them, because we're just wanting to save our light and color options. And I'm going to go ahead and say save. And now I'm going to hop to a different image. Let's hop to, I guess we'll do this one. And let's say that I wanted to apply all of those edits that I made to this image here. So we can see here, these are all starting at 0. If I want to find that preset that I just saved, it's going to be here under the presets panel and underneath yours. And then you can see there are user presets. So I have a couple other presets I have used in other classes, but down at the bottom, and it might be kind of hard to see on Zoom, I'm sorry, but at the bottom of the image, it tells you the name of the preset. So this was my class 2025 preset. Okay. And it has applied those presets that we had on that last image to our image here. So we didn't have to go through and make all of these edits and adjustments. Okay, before we move on, were there any questions? Because we're going to talk about some kind of cool heal and clone tools and like red eye removal tools next.
Could you show quickly again how to get back to the preset panel?
Yes, so the preset panel is going to be here on the right-hand side of the screen, this is where all of our different kind of panel options live. So the very top one, and if you hover over it, it will tell you it's called presets. You can click on that, and that's going to pop that presets panel in and out. And it will be the same. The one right underneath it is going to be edits, and you can click on that and it will pop it in and out. You'll also notice when you hover over, there are quick keys. So if you like to use quick keys, if I press Shift P, that's going to pop that preset panel out as well. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okie dokie. So now we are actually going to move to another panel. That's an option over here. So it is one, two, three, the fourth one down. It looks like a little eraser. And this is called, what do they call this panel? The remove panel, which it actually has a couple different options underneath here. So for this first one, which is really cool, it's called remove and it does use generative AI. I'm actually going to move to this image here. It's kind of a boat in a canal. So if you're following along, it's going to be this image here that we're going to be practicing with. And this does use generative AI to remove objects from your image. And this has actually gotten much better from the last time that I taught this class. It worked a lot better when I was practicing for today. So in this image, it looks great. Other than, in my opinion, this little flower that's on the boat, I would like to remove that. So we can do that. What I'm going to do first is actually zoom in because this is kind of a little zoomed out for my taste. So I'm going to zoom into, let's just say 66%. On here, if you zoom in and now you need to move your photo, you'll actually have to press and hold the space bar, and that's going to generate this little hand where your cursor should be, and then you can move to the part of the image that you're wanting to focus on. So here you can see it's got this kind of circle with a plus mark in the middle. That's going to be the size of the brush that we will be using. If you have a mouse that has like a little scroll um, wheel on top, you can use the scroll wheel to increase and decrease the size. But if not, you can also come over here and increase and decrease the size of your brush with this slider over here. So for this remove option, you actually want to overdraw. So you don't want to get like the smallest brush size and be really meticulous in brushing this little flower guy out. You actually want to kind of go outside of where it's at. And that's just because with the generative AI, it works a lot better if it's not super specific. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and just click and then drag. And you can see it kind of creates this outline around the area. And then when you let go, it kind of shows you where you selected in this red mask. Now, if you selected too much, over here in this remove panel, you can click subtract, and then you can come in and kind of clean up what you selected. So let's say we just wanted to remove the flower part, you can clean that up, and then we would go in and click this remove. But I do want to remove the whole flower. So I'm actually going to go back to add and make sure that this is all selected. Okay, and once it's selected, you're going to go ahead and click this remove button here. And it's going to do its thinking, telling you it's removing the area. And now I'm going to real quickly go back to fit, and we can see it did a pretty good job of removing that flower, and that was very minimal work. Over here in the remove panel, there are some variations it's going to create for you. Let me zoom back in one more time for you guys. Let's go, what was I on? Okay, so it's going to create 3 different versions that you can sort through and decide which one you like better. So the second option, this is the third option. Most of them look pretty good, honestly. I think I like this third one the best though. So you can choose which of those variations you like. And if for some reason that variation did not please you, you can click this generate option and it's going to generate some more variations that you can go ahead and try to utilize. So I think that did a pretty good job. I would not be able to tell that there was a flower there before. Um, if you decide you don't want that anymore, or if you want to try to redo it, you can click this little trash icon and it's going to delete that selection. Okay, I'm going to select a different photo now because I do want to talk about the healing tool and the red eye tool. And I also want to try to talk about the clone tool real quick before we talk about exporting. We do only have about 9 minutes left. But again, if you have any questions, just let us know in the chat and I'll do my best to repeat anything. So we're going to go to this image of a woman's face. She's got red eyes and then also some blemishes. So first, we're going to use the healing tool. So we're still in this remove panel, and it's going to be this little image of a Band-Aid, and it's heal. So this is best for quick, like skin touch-ups. Same as with the remove tool, we have a brush that is being created, and we can move the size with our scroll on our mouse, or you can use the slider up here. But for this, and I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit. Let's go to I'm going to go to 300. Um, you do want to be a little more specific with with the size of your brush. So I'm actually going to make it a little smaller. And I'm going to go ahead and click right here between her kind of two blemishes down here. And when it does this, what it's doing is it's drawing, basically cloning a part, and then you have a source here. So you can see these two circles that are created. This first circle is going to be where you want the cover up to be occurring. So now I can drag it to make that circle a little bigger if I've decided I needed it to be a bit bigger. So let's do that. There we go. And then this other circle that's connected to it with this little arrow, this is your source. So for example, if I were to move it up to like her cheek, or let's do her eye. You can see the source is being cloned down here basically. So obviously we wouldn't want to do that. You want to try to select something that's close to the area that you're trying to cover up. So I would definitely choose something that's like here on her chin. And then we can see, let me zoom it back out. But now her blemish that was down there is covered up. So again, if you decided you wanted to redo that or didn't quite like how that looked, you could click this trash icon, and that's going to go ahead and delete that from the image, and you can retry. But she also happens to have red eyes, so we can fix that very easily in Lightroom, and that's going to be here, the red eye option. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit again for you guys. Okay, so with the red eye option, again, we have kind of our circle that's created, and that's going to be our brush size. So we do want that to be able to cover her entire eye, and this one does. So once you have it to the size that you need it to be, which you can adjust here with the sliders over here, you're going to click on the eye, and then this one you do usually have to adjust a little bit because as we can see here, it's not quite removing the red eye. It's kind of put our mask down in this weird elliptical layer. So I'm just going to drag this down and then click in the middle and keep adjusting until that little black spot it has created is covering her entire eye. And now over here, this darken slider, we can use to either make that layer basically that it created to remove the red eye either darker, or we can make it a little lighter. So now obviously if your person had like green eyes and you're trying to remove red eyes, you're not going to get them back to green eyes with this tool alone. But it is a good way to remove red eyes from photos pretty easily. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the one over here as well. So again, I'm just clicking on the eye and then dragging the circles to make adjustments to the size of that layer. And then changing my darkness a little bit. And now let me zoom back out. And now we can see her red eyes have been removed. So pretty easy option there to remove red eyes and blemishes from an image. Now, real quickly, before we talk about exporting, actually, we only have 5 minutes left, so I think I am going to skip the clone tool. I will say if you hover over the clone tool, it's going to show you what the clone tool can be used for. Oh, well, usually it does. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So the clone tool is really good for patterns and replacements. So it kind of works the same way that our blemish remover just did, where you can choose a source in your image and then it will recreate that source. So for here, for example, they were adding a bird in. So it selected one of the birds as its source and then was able to move that bird to another area to basically clone it. So that's a really cool option to play around with if you would like, but we are running out of time. So we're going to go ahead and talk about exporting. So I'm going to move back to my photo grid view down here at the bottom left-hand side so that I can see all of the images that we had today. And you can export all of the images or you can select, just a couple of images that you would like to export. So just like all of the other times we've selected files today, you can either control and then hold down to select images that are not next to each other, or you can click on the first, hold shift and click on the last, and you're going to select all of your images. And once you have all the images selected that you want to export, you're going to come up to the menu bar and go to File, Export, and that's going to bring up our export window. And a few things I wanted to show you guys here. So settings over here on the right-hand side, this panel, you can change your image type. So JPEG, TIFF, AVIF, DNG. JPEG is pretty popular, so I'm going to keep it on JPEG. You can change the dimension, so you can make it a smaller file size, or you can do a custom file size. And then quality, I would not recommend doing anything less than 100, to be honest. But you can also include a watermark. So if I click that, it's going to default to just putting your Adobe account name in there. So you can see our Adobe account name down here. If you click on the little gear mark next to the watermark, you can actually change if you want a different font style. You can change the font style, the color, size, opacity, things like that. But if you have your own watermark graphic, you can click on this graphic option, and then you can actually search for that on your computer, and it will lay down your graphic here. And you still have the option to then change the size, opacity, things like that. So that's a really cool option. I'm actually going to go ahead and not include the watermark though. And then for file naming, this is going to be the name of your photos when you export. So I do recommend doing a custom name because if you do original, it's going to be the same file name as your unedited photos. So in my mind, that could just create kind of a mess and organization on your actual computer or whatever device you're editing on. So I usually will do custom name, and then you can choose the start of your custom name. So I'm going to say class, and then start number. I would probably just say 1. And then if you click down here, you can see as I click on each image, it's telling you the file name here. So this is now class 2, class 3, and it just goes on and on. So we would have up to class 13 here. You can change your color space here. RGB is pretty okay if you're just sharing on web and email. If you're wanting to print, I would suggest the Adobe RGB. But after you have that all selected, you would click Export 13 Photos, and then you would be able to go ahead and choose where on your computer or your device that you're wanting to save it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my class folder, and I'm actually real quickly going to make a new folder here called Final Products. And then I'm going to select that folder. And then that is going to be where it exports to. It's going to take a little bit of time. You can see down here in my lower bar, it's showing its progress. And if I open up my File Explorer, we should be able to see here under Final Products, all of our exported final products and their new file names. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this and bring up the PowerPoint real quickly one more time. Were there any questions that popped up in those last couple of minutes that we had there? Okay. So I did just want to mention that we do have some upcoming technology programs that you all might be interested in. So we do have Photoshop Basics that will be at Haggard Library tomorrow, actually at 6:30 p.m. We will have Microsoft PowerPoint Basics at the Harrington Library on Sunday, March 16th at 2 p.m. We will be having a Premiere Pro Basics class, and that will be another virtual class on Monday, March 24th at 3 p.m. And then there will be audition podcast editing over at the Haggard Library on Saturday, April 26th. And again, that is going to be at 2 p.m. If you would like to view all of our programs or register for this virtual program, we do have our online calendar, which Megan is going to drop a link to into the chat so you guys can easily access that. And then again, earlier in class, I mentioned that there are LinkedIn Learning classes and Udemy courses that you have access to with your library card. So these are for free and they're really, really great. They range in time and they're also self-paced. So even like this longer one, this Udemy Adobe Lightroom Essentials, it's 9 hours and 23 minutes, but you can always pause that at any time, skip around, skip different portions of the class. But these are just some of the classes that I would suggest taking. And Megan's going to go ahead and drop the links for those into the chat as well. But there are a ton of other Lightroom and other Adobe Creative Cloud application trainings, both on LinkedIn Learning and Udemy. And then again, I mentioned earlier, this recording of today's class will be available in just a couple of days on the Plano Public Library YouTube. Again, we're going to drop a link into the chat for you so you can access that if you'd like to try to follow along again once it is posted or view any of our other programs that we have done. And then the other thing I'd like to mention is that if you do need more one-on-one help from one of our librarians, about 30 minutes and the chance to go over your specific questions, you can complete a Book a Librarian appointment request. And each session of these is going to be tailored to your specific needs and is compatible for your schedule. So we'll drop a link to where you can submit a Book a Librarian appointment into the chat if that is something that you are interested in. All right, and before we end, were there any questions? Okay, I'm going to give just a couple more minutes of keeping the class open just so you can grab any links. But thank you guys so much for joining us today.